I'm Yao, museum educator for the Seattle Asian Art Museum at SAM. I'm here in the art studio at the museum, and I'm so thrilled you'll be joining us for an art activity based on this Palampore from SAM's Asian art collection. If you would like to take a closer look and discuss this bed covering before diving into this art activity, check out the associated Eyes on Asia close-looking video on SAM's YouTube channel. For this activity, you will need one sheet of construction paper or printer paper, a pencil, and an eraser. There are also some bonus materials that you can use for this project, like a pen, stencils, a ruler, pre-cut paper shapes, scratch paper for sketching, tracing paper, scissors, and something to color with, like colored pencils. I'm so excited to introduce our teaching artist, Amina, who will help us create an artwork inspired by the lines, shapes, and patterns in this Palampore.
Hello, I'm Amina Quraishi, and I am an artist. My work is inspired by traditional Islamic art and architecture. It's also inspired by nature. We're going to be looking at a piece from the Seattle Asian Art Museum. This piece is titled Palampore, or a bed covering. It's from India. The shapes and patterns in this piece remind me of my childhood. So a little bit about myself. My parents are from a city in South India called Chennai, and they immigrated to Canada when I was 3 years old. So I grew up in Toronto, Canada. So although I didn't live in India, I do have very fond memories of visiting my grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins in India. One thing that stood out to me in my trips to India were the rich, vibrant colors that I saw everywhere, and all these beautiful patterns that adorned houses and textiles, clothing, jewelry. They were all around me. And when I would wear my traditional Indian attire, called shalwar kameez, it's a pair of trousers with a long top or a dress. I also saw these beautiful, vibrant colors and these patterns, and it reminded me of India. I also saw these same patterns and shapes when my aunt would apply henna on my hands the night before Eid. Eid is a religious holiday for Muslims. So these patterns were all around me. What kind of shapes do you see when you go outside? These are some things to think about when we do this activity.
I'm using a square piece of watercolor paper, and I'm using the ruler to draw a border around the watercolor paper. I'm using the thickness of my ruler to draw the borders. You can do the same with the rectangular sheet of paper. Along the outer edge and inner edge of this border, I'm going to draw 2 additional thin borders. You can draw as many borders as you like. You'll notice in the Palampore bed covering, there are many borders. Not all of them go all the way around. Some of them are just on the top or just on the bottom. Now we have a thick border with 2 thinner borders on the outer edge and inner edge. Using the ruler, I'm going to connect the corners of these borders with the diagonal line. This is going to help me section off the border into 4 parts. As a work of Islamic art, the Palampore bed covering has many shapes, motifs, and imagery that resemble Mughal art and architecture, like the Taj Mahal, for example. The Arabesque borders on the Palampore bed covering have these beautiful spiraling floral patterns. You have these patterns that look like vines from which leaves and flowers are coming out from. Spirals are one of the 3 main elements of Arabesque patterns. A lot of times you see spirals in the background or as a structural element from which different shapes and motifs sprout out from. The second key element of Arabesque patterns is symmetry and structure. Having symmetry in Arabesque patterns is important because it gives it a sense of completeness and unity. And lastly, rhythm, and balance. The spirals create a sense of movement, and the symmetry and careful repetition of each element creates a sense of balance. To draw an arabesque border, start by drawing a curved, wavy line. Draw these curves with your pencil lightly. When you're satisfied with your lines, go ahead and darken them with your pencil. Add more curved lines to make them look like spirals. The Palampore bed covering is from India. The imagery, like the flowers, plants, leaves seen in the bed covering, are inspired by the local plants and vegetations in India. Think about the types of plants, flowers that you see in your surroundings, and try to incorporate this into your border pattern. When I look outside, I see lots of tulips, so I'm going to draw tulips for my border pattern. I'm breaking down the tulips into much simpler shapes. Starting by drawing a circle, I'm going to keep all 3 petals within the circle with the tips of the petals curving outwards. I'm simplifying the shapes. In between the flowers, where there is space, I'm going to draw different shaped leaves. Now that one section of the border is complete, I want to repeat this border pattern on the remaining 3 sections. Using a piece of tracing paper, I'm going to tape it down securely, and I'm going to trace the border pattern. I'm going to trace it by applying a little bit of pressure with my pencil to get dark lines. Once I'm done tracing, I'm going to carefully remove the piece of tracing paper. I'm going to turn it around so the side that I drew on is facing the watercolor paper, and I'm going to place this on the next section of the border like this and tape it down. With the drawing side face down against the watercolor paper, I'm going to trace over the pattern. The pressure from tracing over the pattern is going to transfer the lead on the other side of the tracing paper to the watercolor paper. This technique allows me to draw the reflection of the pattern, and this is going to help me achieve a symmetrical border pattern all the way around. You can use this technique with the same tracing paper for the remaining 2 sections. Now that the border is complete, let's draw an arabesque pattern in the center. Using a piece of tracing paper, place the corner of the tracing paper to match the corner of the square or rectangle in the center of your paper. Draw in the remaining 2 edges of the square or rectangle on your tracing paper using a ruler and pencil. Cut out the square or rectangle from the tracing paper using scissors. Fold the tracing paper in half by taking the top 2 corners and matching it to the bottom 2 corners, like this. Then fold it in half again, like this. These 2 edges are the folded edges, and they will act as your lines of symmetry. Anything that you draw on these 2 edges will be reflected on the other side of the tracing paper. Think about different shapes and patterns that you see in your surroundings, at home, outside. Think about these shapes and patterns and how you can use it to draw an arabesque pattern with rotational symmetry. Rotational symmetry, also known as radial symmetry, is when an image, shape, or pattern is rotated on an angle or in a circular manner. Remember the 2 edges that act as a line of symmetry. Whatever you draw on these 2 edges will be reflected on the opposite side. So if you want to draw a shape, you only have to draw half the shape on this edge, and it will be reflected on the other side to complete that shape. I am drawing arabesque motifs that I see on my carpet at home. I'm placing these motifs together in a composition, keeping in mind the lines of symmetry. The pattern that you see here is only 1/4 of the pattern. When you are finished drawing in 1/4 of your composition, open up your tracing paper and fold it in half so that the side that you drew on is on the outside. Fold it in half and flip it over so that you can see your drawing on the other side. Place a spare piece of paper underneath, and I'm going to trace over the pattern that I see from the other side. So this is the reflection of the first quarter. So when I open it, I have 1/2 of the pattern complete. And this time I'm going to fold it in half this way so that the drawing is on the outside. I'm going to flip it over and trace the remaining pattern. When I open this up, I have the full completed pattern. You can see the radial symmetry, how each quarter is symmetrical and is a reflection. The last step is I'm going to take this tracing paper and the side that has the drawing, I'm going to place it face down on my piece of watercolor paper. I'm going to tape it down securely on the top and bottom, and I'm going to trace over it one last time. I'm going to trace the full pattern, and once I'm done tracing, I can remove the tracing paper and the pattern would have been transferred completely on the watercolor paper, and it's ready to paint or color in using any medium. Remember to take your time and enjoy the process, because the process of creating is just as important as the outcome. It may seem like there are a lot of steps and that it may be redundant, but these steps help us to take time and reflect and focus.
Visit Sam's website to find more lessons and activities connecting art at the Seattle Asian Art Museum to our lives. Thanks for watching and learning with us.